Problem 5-33. The function f of x is represented in the graph at right. Draw a graph of its inverse function. Be sure to state the domain and range for both f of x and the inverse of the function f of x. So we've got our graph here, and what we see right here is our function f of x, our function f here. And the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and just kind of mark what points I have. I just can see clearly that I have a point here, a point right here, point here, and actually, you know what, let's mark this one as well, and that one there. So for my function f here, let's take it and let's just list out those points in a little t-chart here, input-output table. I've got the point -2, -3. I've got the point 0, -2. Point 1, 0. The point 2, 2. And the point 5, 3. Now to graph our inverse function, we'll do that one in blue here. We have to come up with the points. Now remember that relationship between our function and its inverse is we're going to end up swapping our x's and our y values for each point. So if we have -3 as our input, we should get -2 as the output. -2, 0, 0 and 1, 2 and 2, and then 3 and 5. Let's go ahead and plot those on here. So we have back 1, 2, 3, down 1, 2. We've got -2, 0. Then we've got 0, 1, 2, 2, and then 3, 5. So I'm going to just sketch this one in here. So we're going from here to here. There. We'll actually go straight through that to this point, and then it shifts up. So the last thing it asks us to do here is to make sure that we state the domain and range for each of these. So I'm going to list my domain for my red function here, or my original function. Our domain spans from, well, this is our endpoint, so this is our lowest x value. Where are we at? We're at -2. And we're going to go from -2 all the way across to our highest x point, which is over here, which is at 5. So we're going to say our domain is going to span from -2 to +5, or x is greater than or equal to -2 and less than or equal to 5. For our range, let's look at our y values. We're going to go from our bottom point to our top point. So we're starting down here. Our value for our y coordinate of this point would be -3. And our highest point is this one here, and its y value would be 3. So our -3 is less than or equal to y, which is less than or equal to 3. That is our range value. These are the domain range for our red function here, or f of x. Let's do our inverse now, and then we can kind of look and see if there's anything that, I don't know, that stands out or that's interesting. So if we take our domain here for our blue function, this is our inverse function, remember? Our lowest point starts at -3, and then it goes all the way to +3. So we've got -3 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 3. And then our range, our bottom point here is at -2, and it goes all the way up to our top point is going to be at +5. So our bottom is -2. So -2 is less than or equal to y, and then y is going to be less than or equal to 5. Now, things to look at this, to look at on these is, remember, we're switching our x's and y's. So the span of x's that we have for our domain in the first function go from -2 to 5. But remember, for our inverse, this domain ends up becoming our y values. So notice it has the same values as our range of our inverse function. And then our y's, from our original function became our x's for our inverse. So notice here that our range actually becomes our new domain. And that is one of the relationships that we want you to see between a function and its inverse. A couple other things that you could point out here for our red function. We've got our y-intercept is going to be 0, -2, and our x-intercept is 1, 0. Well, when we flip-flop our coordinates here, we end up with 0, 1. Actually, let me write that in blue, so we end up with 0, 1, which is our point on our inverse function, and we also end up with -2, 0, which is also on the inverse function here. But this is our x-intercept on the inverse, and 1, 0 was our x-intercept here. Now that becomes our y-intercept after we flip-flop our points there. So if you know the domain and range and the x and y intercepts for a function, you should be able to come up with the same exact information, or the domain, the range, x-intercepts and y-intercepts of the inverse function. This is problem 5-33. If you have more questions, make sure you ask your teacher in class. Thanks for listening.